Good evening. You know what? I know that I haven't been pushing the dice because they changed their name. Metallic Dice Games is no longer Metallic Dice Games. It's now Fan Roll. You can still get 10% off by using the code SMSDICE10. You can go there, 10% off of any of your orders with the code SMSDICE10. But go to fanroll.com. No longer metallicdice.com. So we're still doing it. We're still doing our sponsor there. Great bunch of stuff they're putting out. Boom. I like these. Really nice dice. Really nice dice. Except for, yet again, love that. So, remember, it's now no longer Metallic Dice Games. It is now Fan Roll. So, SMS DICE 10. Get 10% off your purchase. And now, get ready for the show. Hello, welcome to today's episode of the Group Therapy Podcast. Today we have friend, somebody I've known for a bunch of years now. God, over 20 years probably. Another comic book artist. I want to say probably the best, almost photorealistic artist I know. Dave Aikins. Dave, tell us about yourself.
Well, I supposedly am one of the best photo artists you know, whatever that means. But you know, I'll take it. My name is in fact Dave Aikins, and I'm an illustrator, cartoonist, whatever you want to call me, here in Ohio. And my specialty, what people tend to know me for, what tends to keep me the busiest, is working on what we call licensed characters. Past 21 years, I've been working a lot with Nickelodeon. So I do a lot of publishing work for them. Things like SpongeBob, Dora, Paw Patrol, Blue's Clues, all that stuff. So I've done about 200 or so children's books over the past 20 years, and video game covers, DVD covers, all that kind of stuff. I also do a lot of product design work for the Bradford Exchange and their companies, the Hamilton Collection, Hawthorne Village, all that stuff. So I draw a lot of designs for statues and collectibles and things like that. And then, in between, occasionally I do commissions for people, and that's where what do you got? Collect them in some books, but that's where the technique studies of photographs comes in, and that's and then I also for over 20 years have been Twilight Creations, which is a board game company. I've been their main artist for games like Zombies and whatever other games that aren't zombies that they do. It's been a long time. I forget these things. Yeah.
Well, you know, I've known you.
Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night. That's the end. Thank you very much for coming by. Like I said, I've known you for a bunch of years now, and I don't know if we met in Columbus or if we met in Motor City or something years
well
ago.
I started doing shows. I grew up reading comics, and I grew up going to comic conventions. So the moment that I started to do anything, even adjacent to comics, and I really don't do work for comic book companies. Just very minor, a little bit with Moonstone, occasional covers for them, and I've like penciled in my life probably 2 10-12 page stories. I really don't do that yet. Maybe in the future. But I had started to do some gaming, collectible card game work with a company in Cincinnati. And I figured, what the hell? I'll start setting up at shows. And that was the beginning with like Mid-Ohio. And then once the Zombies game kicked in, I thought that was kind of cool. So I set up, Motor City, and then very quickly, I would say probably about 2002, 2003, the Dora and the licensing book started to come out. So that started that. But I think I started with shows around 2000. So yeah, I mean, we would have met anywhere in those early years of Mid-Ohio and Motor City Con. My family, I'm originally from outside of Detroit, so I was, Motor City was one show that I was more than happy to look into setting up with. And then I always do shows with Andy Bennett. Andy had already done some Motor City shows and Mid-Ohio shows because he was working with Caliber Comics, which is outside of Detroit. And so, it was very quick to be like, I'll join you. And, and it really right off the bat, it was like, I'm sitting next to you, buddy. and that started getting out and doing conventions and meeting people, and really, which is the only way I'm a shut-in. I don't work with anybody. Don't have coworkers. So without doing shows, the chances of me meeting anybody which is probably better, but yeah, it's weird. I mean, because you're right. Like talking to your kid and seeing kids at shows now, and they're old. They're all the young adults.
Oh, yeah.
They're all now getting to be in their 20s, and it's we're old. Oh, my back. Well, but I know, and I just kind of hit me as I approach 50 that I thought, we look at the past 20 years and go, hey, if you do that again, you'll be 70. You're like, oh no, don't make it go by so quickly.
Was it somebody pointed out to me now that it's closer to 2050 than 1980? And I'm like, the hell, man, thanks.
Well, time has lost all meaning, combined to just being at our age, combined with the COVID. But the change in things in technology and in a certain slowdown, if you just look at 1980 to 2000, especially in my industry, with commercial art, if you look what happened in those 20 years, where just so much changed and just things just went, just crazy in those 20 years. And then you look at the past 20 years, it's, I still work on computers that are getting near 20 years old. And so, yeah, it's just amazing the difference between, or even, like the difference between 1975 and 2000 for us is just like huge, but the difference between 2000 and, getting near 2025 doesn't have that same kick.
No.
And of course, bands that are new are now 20 years old. And
they posted the other day, it's like bands, this album is now 40 years old, or this album is now 30 years old. And you just stare at it and you're like, I saw that. I went to that concert live. I've seen that. It's like,
yeah. Old. Well, I like to take that and apply that to what the originators went through and think of how quickly that people became old. How quickly Chuck Berry was old, and how quickly, even making fun of Paul McCartney in the late 90s as being old.
Mm-hmm.
or the Stones, and then go, oh shoot, now they're really.
Yeah.
It's just kind of funny to think of how quickly things became oldies radio, back in the days of AM FM, and that 10 years, 15 years, and you were oldies act, and now you think, well, that makes you, 15 years now makes you.
That's you're a new band.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
The what was it? I almost never listen to regular radio, AM FM radio anymore. But every once in a while I'll like be driving somebody else's car or something, and I don't want to mess with anything, so I just turn on the radio. And I was listening to the local rock station, and it was like playing, and it's mostly classic rock, and then Motley Crue and like Bon Jovi, and you're like, that's. And then I'm thinking about it, I'm like, man, I was like, when I was a kid, Motley Crue is older than Led Zeppelin was when I was a kid.
Yeah, you start to do that, and so I've been lucky enough, and I mean, I guess maybe you're the same with the store, in that music has always been on.
Mm-hmm.
I do not need to be worked. I do not need to be worked. I don't need to work in silence.
Yeah.
Rarely do I need to concentrate that much that I need it to be quiet. So music is constantly been a part of my life in working and all that. And I prefer music to movies. I don't like having movies on or podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I used to have the TV on at night for reruns of syndicated sitcoms and things. And I used to be addicted to and love Letterman and Craig Ferguson. I got my Jeff shirt. But now it's just music. And I really like old Casey Kasem American Top 40. I just absolutely adore the context of whatever year, the top 40 songs. And I love it when they are bands that, especially when it gets to ones where not only have you never heard the song before, like it is vanished from time, but the band obviously has also vanished from time. So that's the twofer, when the song had no legs and the band gone too. I mean, it's another thing when you get to like the third song from a band that had a big hit and then a kind of a minor hit, and then by the third one, you're like, they had a third one. But when this was it, and they got to number 33, and I just like thinking, oh, they must have been so happy, coming in at number 33, and it's just a band where you're like, nope. And these are all people now that are somebody's uncle, and like, boy, in 1975 they almost made it.
Oh yeah. Well, what was it? When I worked up in Sydney, there was a radio station up there that around from Christmas to New Year, they would just play old, like Rick D's countdown from over the years. So, and it was I think Rick Dees is the one that took over from Casey Kasem. So I think it was a continuation of that. But like you'd be sitting there in the middle of the night and you'd hear like, this came out February 5th, 1983. This was the top 40, for that week. And you're just like, huh, I knew 5 of those.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And so my grandparents used to live about 40 minutes away, and they would never come over. So we always would have to drive over to their place. And so that's 2 trips of 40 minutes in the car. We're listening to radio in the 70s. And a lot of weird things pop in when you go and dig, and you just go, oh my God, how do I know this? Years ago, I have Sirius XM, and years ago, I don't know, I was mean to myself, was listening to yacht rock, just a ton of yacht rock, just awesome. And it was, I would say 80% was music from the 70s that I knew, hadn't heard for just since the 70s, and have no idea why or how that I'd be like, no, Baby Come Back, or, Player, or just all these bands that I'd be like, what the hell was that band? Chilliwacky, whatever, just Yeah. So yeah, it is part of that. I guess it's a nice thing. But of course, I have a huge collection of music, but instead I'm listening to Sirius XM and old Casey Kasem. Oh man. But that's not why you called.
But that's not why you're here. No, but hey, this is where we go. Natural conversations. So, that's what we said. So what are you listening to now? Are you still listening to the Casey Kasem top 40 stuff?
These days, yeah. I love Casey Kasem. That is on iHeartRadio. The problem with that is that they don't have commercials. They have these little bumpers, little interviews with people like Elton John and Santana and Daryl Hall, and they only have so many of them, and they play them so many over and over so many times that I yell at them. Like I have little one-sided monologues with Elton John where he'll make a bad joke and I'll just that's a great one, Elton, or just it's just so I have to tone it down because it's starting to mess with me. Sirius XM, I listen to a lot of Underground Garage because it's got the biggest mix. I like music from probably the 50s up into the early 90s and cross genre from blues, rock rhythm and blues to new wave. First wave got too repetitive. I just knew the music too much. And then there are shows that people have. David Johansen from New York Dolls has a weekly show that's like 3 hours, and it's just fantastic. And it's all just everything from opera and Broadway to girl bands to whatever he wants to play. And there are just other people that have good shows that I like listening to. So, and then every now and then I'll remember that I actually buy music and should probably listen to it. But I like DJs. I do like voices on the radio. It just helps with just a little bit of isolation for some reason. I wish everyone was a little more like Adrienne Barbeau in The Fog, but they're not. But boy, I think even if they're a guy, just picture that they're Adrienne Barbeau, and up there in the lighthouse.
Well, you have Adrienne Barbeau as a DJ in The Fog, and then Halloween 3, you have Jamie Lee Curtis is the DJ in that one.
That's right. Oh, jeez, the little tiny boy. I'm so giddy that movie is now viewed as being a gem because
3 is awesome.
It is the ultimate what the hell was it? What were you people thinking movie ever made? And I just love Tom Atkins or whatever. I'm a big Night of the Creeps fan. Was he in that?
Yeah, because he's the girls. Your dates are here.
Yeah. Got good news and bad news.
Bad news. Your dates are here.
What's the good news? Your dates are here. What's the bad news? They're dead.
They're dead.
So yeah. So that one was always a weird Season of the Witch was a weird one as a kid, and anything weird was memorable.
Yep.
It couldn't just be violent in just a horror movie. It also had to be something about it that. Like I always liked Night of the Living Dead because of the end. I always found the end to be really disturbing, where it just goes to the slides and the credits and the whole, the creepiness of that ending with no music and just would always get me as a kid. Like, ooh, now this is off-putting. Meat hooks.
Oh yeah, when they're dragging his body and throwing it on the fire and stuff, and it's all that. It's you hear all the stuff going on, but there's no music and everything, and you're just like, man.
Yeah.
And to know the fact that was never meant to be that whole big meaning behind it, that because everybody's like, oh, I can't believe they cast a black actor as the lead, and they're like, he just happened to be the best actor we could afford.
Oh, and it's great because it makes the movie timeless, you know,
Oh
and
yeah.
thank God it makes it timeless. In that, you know, we look back at so much of our popular culture, which is just very, very, you know,
Well,
non-diverse.
yeah.
And so you know, you look at that movie and it just makes it, it it just really gives it a great ability to just not feel as dated, which
Yep.
is, and it's just wonderful because he did a great job in that film too.
Mhm.
And the fact that nobody in that movie, for better and for worse, nobody in there went on to do anything
No.
that I know of. And so it makes that movie stand alone as just this absolute gem. And of course, working on the Zombies game, people thought that I was a horror junkie. And
Seriously, dog.
I like that.
Yeah.
And you know, they would, oh yeah, you're horror. And I was never a big, you know, was never huge into horror movies, but I liked Night of the Living Dead, and was from Detroit, so obviously liked all the Evil Dead movies and all that kind of stuff. But wasn't the Fangoria kid that a lot of friends of mine were.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
Oh well.
when you did any of the zombie stuff, did you ever like want to just go ahead and put some of the Night of the Living Dead people in there, but you know you couldn't because of license?
No, you know, a lot of that stuff takes effort. And, you know, sometimes inside jokes like that take work and take time, and I'm just too lazy and too tired to do that. I just want to get it done.
Well, it's funny
But
because
you know,
how many of the zombie ones are you?
oh, too many. And it's me because I use photo reference, and there's not a lot of time, and changing faces takes time.
Yeah.
And so it's me, and it's my buddy Matt that I went to college with, and whoever he was married to or dating at the time, and then maybe I sucker my wife into that, or every now and then I'd get lucky and have either friends or people you know, that kind of joined in. But you know, and then sometimes I do my best to try to draw different, and it would so yeah, it's hard, you know. These are not the clock's ticking and the budgets aren't huge, so you just got to do your best and get it done.
Oh man. Well, you know, since I've known you, you've done the really like the high, what I would call the high end photorealistic stuff. How did you get into Nickelodeon with the kids cartoony stuff? Oh,
You know, even in art school, I was always.
so
And
there's,
where are you? Are you home?
yeah,
Okay.
this is my what I call my lair. We got a this is my, it was a finished basement, and Tina just says keep your stuff down there. You're fine.
Yeah. No, I mean that was similar with this house, finished basement, and that's where I get to live.
That's pretty much this. I have my big TV over here. I got my broken down couch over there that I love because it's comfortable because it's all broken in. I film my interview show this way. I film my other shows. I set the camera up and shoot this way.
It's awesome.
But okay.
All right, you were asking me.
How did you get from the photorealistic artwork to the cartoony artwork?
It's just always been something that I've done, and a lot of it is it's just mimicking things, be it, you know, realism or photo reference, or, you know, cartoon characters. No, it's just always been something that I've done, and went into art school and had a diverse portfolio. Got jobs out of art school that wanted me as an in-house artist to be diverse and do, you know, different styles and different things. And then the second job I got out of art school was at an illustration studio that worked for Hasbro and Milton Bradley and, you know, toy companies, board game stuff. And so that's specifically how I got started doing licensed characters, And that would have been, I think 97. So it's been 25 years of licensed characters, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's not that it's just a lot of copying stuff, really, be it photo reference or cartoon characters. It's just
I was wondering, how strict are they on the artwork? Are they?
oh yeah, it's very meticulous. I mean, everything's got to look the same, to the point where you don't reinvent the wheel. There was a point. Most of these things, most of the licenses, as we would call it, or characters, have style guides, which are collections of artwork that the company has already created, and that artwork can either be used as clip art for companies that don't have the money to create new art, or that art is just there for people like me who are hired to create new art, can reference or cannibalize or Frankenstein, and there's just no reason to reinvent the wheel. And character heads are character heads, and you plop one head on another body, or you take something and it's just whatever's the most efficient and makes it look exactly the way that it needs to look. It got to the point with Dora the Explorer where Nickelodeon sent out a couple of like a file 11 by 17 of Dora heads and said, for the love of God, people, just pick one of these heads. Because at that point, they were the Nickelodeon blue lines. They have a stage in the process called blue lining, where someone who knows who that person is, sometimes it's Nickelodeon's art director, and sometimes it used to be maybe a hired person, would look at all these jobs that we were doing, and they would, well, especially back in the day, would put on tracing paper and redraw all the things that they thought were wrong. And 20 years ago, you would get FedEx envelope with overlays and tracing papers of all these redrawn things, and you just think, all right, buddy, whatever. And nowadays it's just little, you get your Photoshop file back with maybe little corrections here or there, and they're usually like, yeah, it's great, yeah, that looks better, whatever, whatever makes you happy. But the humor was that they got so tired of having the blue line Dora heads that they sent out this file that said, just use these heads. And so, yeah, you'd just be like, that one, that one, that one, that one. And then the blue lines would come back and it would be like, his head is wrong. And you'd just be like, oh God, you're just making the pain is here. You gave me heads to use and I used them. But that used to be, back in the day, that used to be kind of what things were like. You do a book and they'd say, oh, your bodies are too small. Enlarge your bodies. And then, you do another one, they say, your heads are too small. You'd be like, you guys are killing me. These days, mostly these days that stage is fine, but everything's very meticulous. It's very, it has to be perfect. It has to be the same. And like I said, a lot of times the easiest way to do that is to be able to look at a pre-existing image that's approved already and see the potential in it, and then maybe look at 3 different poses and see, or 2, and see, okay, well, that I can, and you either placeholder or reuse. And if it's a placeholder, it's there to just help you get something in there that gives you the proportions, so that you're just not going from nothing. But a lot of that these days is different in the sense that a lot of the shows, a lot of the books I do are adaptations of shows, and a lot of the shows are CGI, and the books we do are kind of flat, almost, and in some cases look like cell animation when the shows are CGI. And so, it's not really like you can just take the show and screenshot and trace and be done, sadly. So it's kind of, you know, you look at the show for a little bit of inspiration on characters and poses, and you know, to match the scenes, and then you combine it with style guide and things like that, and then you also try to make things as efficient as possible, because things are more, as the years go on, the things get more and more complex. Paw Patrol is a perfect example of it. There's, you know, 7 dogs, and they all have these complex costumes, and you'll get these, you know, pages and another page where all 7 dogs are blah blah blah, and you're just like, oh jeez, you're killing me.
See, Vince, he's been hooked on the Nickelodeon stuff since he's real little. He has autism, so he's still stuck on some of it. And it's funny because I've seen my older boys grew up with Blue's Clues. Now he watched Blue's Clues, and I had to ask this one, since they changed the way Blue looks on the show. Now, if you draw, does it go to the old school, the early 2000s Blue, or do you have to try to redraw the new look that they're doing now?
So, well, the humor of that is, so obviously old Blue is what we call off model.
Mm-hmm.
Old Blue is that's all useless, and which is actually, I see, I'm not nobody in my kid was too young or wasn't born yet for Blue's Clues, so I really, Blue's Clues was not a big thing. It really knew very little about Blue's Clues. I find old Blue's Clues to be kind of terrifying looking. I love the new Blue's Clues. I love the design of everything. The art that I do for the new Blue's Clues is like anti-Paw Patrol. It is absolute, just lovely. Everything is kind of flat, and the designs are very simple. You know, it's just lovely little kind of simple, flat, you know, pretty art, and it goes by nice and easy, and it's all just fine. And the show, I think, is lovely. The cover is a matter of trying to do kind of CGI pretty renderings and things like that, and then he's always a photograph, so you know, you know, maybe I can cut an arm off and take a different arm, but for the most part, you know, it's shoehorn in a photograph when needed.
Yeah.
But occasionally the old hosts show up in the new books, and then you go back to the art style when Steve or whatever the original guy,
Joe,
you know, when they were cartoon characters in the old books.
Yep.
You know, then I'm going back to those and bringing that art back in. So, you know, nobody redesigned them for better or for worse. And so that's really the only time in that series where it dips into the old art, because but you know, with something like Dora, she got redesigned, I don't know, at least 3 times in the 10, 15 years of working on Dora, and not necessarily the show, but in the style guide art, it kept getting redesigned and modified in certain styles and techniques and stuff, which then, you know, makes you go back and go, well, that artwork is useless, and you know, don't source that anymore. SpongeBob is stayed pretty close to the same. A lot of the old style guide art is just a little rough, and then a couple of years ago, they threw me a curve ball, and that they wanted the line work to be all colored and some extra shading. You know, after a book was done, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, go back and add some. So he's changed just a touch, but for the most part, it's you know. And those SpongeBob and Dora are great. I think Dora's coming back next year. I haven't gotten any work or haven't seen designs or style guide work or anything yet, but I think she's coming back. SpongeBob, that we tried, they tried doing Camp Coral, the show where he's younger at camp. Did a little bit of that. That was one of the books that is coming out in January, was a Camp Coral SpongeBob book where he's a little younger. And that's fun.
Yeah.
Again, you know, it's anything where every page doesn't say all 7 dogs. That was something that I dealt with. I thought 15 plus years ago, I thought it would be fun to do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because I was doing a lot of Dora and a lot of, kind of little kids or even young girls. And this was a little bit more boy action, just to give a different sample, different portfolio sample. And then I would get the scripts to Turtles. And, the Dora scripts would be like, Dora and Boots are in the park with Swiper. Like Dora, Boots, Swiper, park. Okay. And you get a Turtles manuscript, it'd be like, all 4 turtles are fighting 7-foot soldiers. And just be like, why did I think this was a good idea?
Well, because
it takes time. What?
Well, it's funny because you talk about the spend all that time on there. You got to spend a ton of time on that, like that Captain America on the cover that you did.
I mean, that kind of stuff goes back to I did a live figure drawing from live models. I started doing that naked people. Ooh. I started doing that. I think I was 15. I think I was a sophomore in high school. That I had been taking a high school portfolio class at a place in suburban Detroit that was an art store, and it had classes. And after the portfolio class, there was a adult figure drawing class. And my dad was a car designer for Ford, and we knew the owner of this place for ages since we were little. And he said, I think your son's, mature enough and good enough to do the adult class. And so there was nothing weird about it for my dad. I mean, he never used to. His joke was that the only time that the car designers would go to figure drawing class at Art Center was when they had the first black playmate was a model, and everybody, obviously all the guys went to that class.
Oh yeah.
The car designers did not like drawing humans. They just, and my dad would say, it got to the point he would draw Batmobile, and we'd be like, no, Dad, we'll draw Batman. It's okay. So,
that's funny. That's something I didn't know about you. And my mother-in-law is from the Detroit area. Her mom was a car designer for Chrysler.
Cool.
Back in the day. One of the last things she worked on, I think, was the Viper and the I think the Prowler.
Wow.
She was retired by then, and we just happened to be there at the cabin up in Michigan, and we were coming into the cabin as these people were leaving. They were Chrysler's lawyers there to have her sign off on some paperwork on a car she designed 20 years before she got to that point.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, my dad's kind of, he ended being kind of head of truck design at the dawn of the SUV, back when gas was $1, and everybody was in love with these gigantic monster SUVs that were the new thing. That was Dad's. He did the Costanza, George Costanza, end on a high note. Everybody loved these new SUVs, and Dad was like, "Good night, everyone. I'm out of here.
Good night, Cleveland. We're out of here." Yes.
he saw a lot of his peers and his buddies getting elbowed out,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, ugh. And then they loved him, but he was still like, yeah, you know what?
He's seen it coming. Yeah.
I'm heading out on top. And he thought maybe he'd stick around a little here and there, but they really, for the most part, yeah, they were just like, okay, Bob, well, we're sorry to see you go, but see you later. And then he started doing aviation painting. He picked up oil paints, and now he paints airplanes and things. But he retired in his mid-50s, which I just look at that and I'm like, that's my hero. So I'm just like, all right, 50's on its way. I'm TikTok, Clarice.
There.
Let's wrap this up. as soon as possible so I can go have fun. But so the figure drawing classes taught me 7 years of a kind of Zen, just look and translate onto paper. Just this focus and see and translate and see and translate. And so those marker drawings, which I do, these 9x12, they're in Copic markers and Prismacolor pencils, just grayscale, and they don't really take that much time, because the reference it's just translating, a technique study on a photograph, from a photograph. It's not reinventing the wheel. There's a goal, make it look like that. And then after you're done with the main work, then it's setting it aside, coming back, looking at it fresh, nitpicking, then scanning it in. You see it's small, and then you see things that are wrong, and then you fix it here at the computer, scanning it again. And then, it's another 15 minutes of just obsessing and driving yourself nuts. Because then, at a certain point you're done and you're just, saying goodbye. It's done. And then, a little OCD kicks in, and but they're just meant to be quick sketches. Nothing, they're meant for people to own a little original art, have something tangible. They're not digital. They're not AI, So yeah. And they're just little kind of things I'd like to do to fill in the gaps from the publishing jobs, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Eventually I need to get off my ass and do something more than just these 9x2. I mean, at a certain point you're like, it's another head drawing. Look at that, Ma. It's another one. Hey, what's next? Another portrait.
Do a movie poster.
Well, and that's what I was just going to say. Yeah, sadly, we all wanted to be a movie poster artist, and it just, that whole industry just went, and it just that's just one of those industries that just was like, oh,
yeah, there's no really cool movie posters.
It's just like getting there right as the store closes. You're like, hey, we made it. Oh, you're sold out.
It's all just photos that they just, put in a computer and put them where they need to go. I mean, even though I have Godzilla King of the Monsters over there, and I wish I had an old school Godzilla poster, but I do like it because it's Godzilla. But I mean, almost all the rest of my posters that are around here are, art. So,
Yeah, and it's cool that there's a kind of a fan movement of silkscreen posters, but I don't really know the logistics of the financial side of those. All of these kind of, be it Mondo or there's 8 gazillion. I think there's a place in Columbus here that Mad Duck or something that does them. And I love silk screen prints. I think it's a neat art form of the colors are beautiful. The inks and the paints are gorgeous. But I've never, that's kind of, again, that's on the list of things to hopefully, try and do, as the need to book as many, cartoon character job, as possible kind of dwindles. Yeah, maybe I can get the kid to go to a trade school. I don't know, You really need to go to college. Can't you be a plumber? Plumbers are awesome. I need a plumber. Don't need a theoretical physicist, but I could use a plumber.
My oldest went in the Navy. He's doing a little bit of schooling now.
Very cool.
My middle 2 boys are, one's in home health care. The other one works for me. So he got in through nepotism. And then Vince, and he's 12 and he's running around upstairs playing video games. So
anybody that does anything that, I sit in my butt and draw cartoon dogs. So yeah, it's not hard for me to be impressed when people go out into the world and actually do things that, actually make some difference to things. I mean,
So I gotta ask you for, because you reminded me of this one. When you do the Nickelodeon stuff, did they give you like, hopefully they give you like 3 books at a time or something like that? So you're just not drawing Paw Patrol straight for like a month. I'd hope they'd do that, but man, I don't know.
You know, the hardest thing about the work is the scheduling and booking the work. It's like spinning plates, you know, and just most of these books have 3 stages. They have the rough drawings, then you wait, those go out. If it's Nick, you've got rough drawings, those go out for 2 weeks. Then you do the tight drawings, you get your notes back, you do the trite drawings, send those out, those go out for another 2 weeks. You get your blue lines and you get your notes, and then it's off to final color land. Usually while the tights are being blue lined or reviewed, I can, if I have the time, I can start working on backgrounds, maybe props, okay, because those are things that nobody tends to say, you know, oh, that's wrong. They usually obsess over the main characters. And so, you know, I prefer to have 3 to 4 different licenses going on at a time. And a lot of that is because at any given moment, 1 to 2 to all of them could just fail miserably and just wrap up. And the more that I kind of am involved in, the less likely it is for everything to come crashing down and leave me, you know, on an unplanned vacation, which happens. And when it does, it's just freelance. I mean, it's just part of the thing, and it's, you just, you know, your world comes crashing down on you. I mean, it's like if somehow somebody said to you, the store is closing for 3 weeks, you know, starting tomorrow, you're done, you know, and you just be like, oh, I didn't know that. Maybe if you had told me, I'd you know, maybe tell the family we'd go on a vacation, or I'd figure out something else, you know. But that's freelancing, man, and that's the nature of being connected to shows. And if the toys don't sell well, and the show, you know, doesn't do well, and it just wraps up. I got very spoiled by Dora and SpongeBob. You know, it gave me a false sense, like it was always Dora, and then I think around 2007 I started SpongeBob, and he you know, was always around. And then there were maybe a 3rd and a 4th that would, you know, they'd come in for a year or 2, and then they'd fail, and then a new ones would come in. And this year's been the first year where everything just failed, and it was the first year where it just in a long time where it was just like nothing. do we have anything? Nothing. Do we have any callers? Are there any callers on the line? No callers at all. Okay. How about now? Is there a caller on the line now? No. And I you know, it was my son, it was a vacation, you know, it was like spring break, and I was just like, you know what? The hell with it, man. I'm just gonna write it. And I'm gonna see how I do. See if I can tolerate the anxiety of failure. And then of course my insurance salesman, you know, was talking to homeowner car insurance, and he's like, I had a friend of mine selling a comic collection, and that's how, you know, he started seeing me at some of these little comic shows, and I was like, you know what? Because I'm a big collector, and my son kind of refers to it when all else fails. My backup job, and one I actually kind of like, is selling the basement. It's just looking around and going, why do I have that? What's that worth? Get that out of here. But I never stopped collecting. I never got rid of, I'd say maybe 90% of my toys, maybe 75%. I mean, there were a couple of times that Mom's, you know, maybe some garage sales, or like, you know, I remember some Clash of the Titans toys somehow got thrown out or sold, and some more obscure kind of Dungeons and Dragons-ish stuff, which, nowadays you're like,
Yep.
But for the most part, most of my childhood obsession of toy buying is just sitting that way, or in tubs. And then I never stopped. I went through high school and kept buying toys, and I went through college, and I was not a big drinker. So all these figures are like beers that I never bought. That's what I tell people. It's like that. That's a beer. That's a beer. That's a beer. The DC, the past 20, 30 years of toys, they're all just beers I never drank. And so you get to a certain point, though, where, or at least I did, where, you just go, yeah, I can't keep, I don't have any, where's this going? What am I doing here with this accumulation? So it kind of turns to, okay, let's see what we can part with stuff. And that's how I was doing. I was going to get rid of comics and some more stuff, doing some shows with my friends that, Bill and Jesse, and and then a whole collection fell into my place. And, I was like, well, I guess I got time this summer to bag and board and process. And now I'm sitting around with all these dang long boxes of books, and, books are out to getting pressed and graded. And I'm falling prey to that whole disease of, is it a 9.6? Is it a 9.8? Oh, it better be a 9.8. It's a 9.2,
Yeah.
I'm going to be like, later this year, I'll be going, what have I done? I rolled the dice and I lost.
I did a while back, right before the right after the pandemic. I bought a collection, got some good stuff in it. That's the worst part about it. During the pandemic, when everybody else was supposed to be shut down, I was technically closed. I was just selling stuff like you online. You talk about that, telling people that, oh, you're on vacation now. That's what happened. We're sitting there and it's like, oh yeah, Monday at midnight, work stops. So Monday I went into worked my butt off, sold a bunch of stuff. And then I was like, now what do I do? So then I just was in there selling stuff online.
Well, in the drop-offs, did you do drop-offs to people and local people?
I did curbside for a while, and then they took that away from me. And then I did drop-offs. I'd go meet people at Kroger parking lot and drop off their comic books or their Magic cards. Or
see, I mean, that was just bizarre for all of us our shut-in artists. It was it's been just a bizarre, at least for me, it's been a weird 3 years. 3 years? Yeah. 2020, 3 years, because the effects of it all have lasted 3 years. And the original, the 2020 effect was nothing, except that the world was going to hell, but I still had deadlines. Nothing changed. In fact, I took on more work because of wanting to be, busy. So it wasn't like there was nothing else to do.
Yep.
And so I worked so much from 2020 and 2021 that I damaged my shoulder. I hurt myself. And that's how much of work was that. And then what started happening last year is the supply chain started to fall apart with China. And so a lot of the work that I did last year got postponed to like this year, to being released this year. So my fall apart took until this year for everything to fall apart. And a lot of that was because of supply chain problems. Clients, be it Twilight Creations with zombies, they couldn't get their Kickstarter new release done because it was being produced in China. China shut down. China then said, if you want it, it's sitting in the ocean and it's going to cost you a ton of money, or if you want us to start making it, it's going to cost you a ton of money. And if it's a Kickstarter project, you're like, people have locked it in. Books. I mean, I was showing the that SpongeBob book. That was this comes out in early January. This was finished 2021, I think, and it got bumped a year, which fills a slot in 2023, which means that's one less slot for a book for me to do. So it's a lot of that, like, things fall apart, and then it leads to me sitting around doing nothing in 2022, not 2020, like when everybody else was sitting around doing. So it's been a weird. So yeah, the past 3 years have just been bizarre for me, which is kind of cool. I mean, in a sense, that's one way to. Cool is one word for it, because it shakes things up a little bit, I guess.
Well,
but
I look at it this way. Because the pandemic, I'd been going to the gym and stuff, but during the pandemic, I actually got to where I was eating healthy and changing everything else up. And so while everybody else, I had friends that were gaining weight, I had lost like 30 pounds.
That's lucky. No, I gained, and that's my COVID cough. That's my Galaxy COVID. Finally got COVID from a convention. Did 7 conventions this year, and the last one in Columbus, hometown one, decided to make me sick, which thankfully was just head cold con crud. But it does make you. I'd gotten COVID, or what was probably COVID, in early 2020 from a convention in February. And it, 2 weeks of kind of feeling crappy. You're like, dude, that was not worth it. The only reason it was worth it was because I actually got to see people and see my parents in February before they said, don't ever see anybody. It was like, oh yeah, whatever. But yeah, conventions, man. Oof. They're weird.
Oh my God. Well, I remember right before the pandemic hit, I stopped shaking hands at conventions. So like, people would want to do a deal, I would always just fist bump, because I didn't, because every time I'd go to a con, I'd get sicker than hell the next day. So I just got to the point where I'm just like, hey man, no thanks, but I don't want to get sick, whatever. And I kept telling everybody, I was like, 2019 is the last year I will shake hands with anybody. And then COVID hit, and now it's like, now everybody's like, I'm like, see, that's why I fist bump.
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna get you, it's gonna get you, and you just have to go in and decide, are you gonna, how much you really gonna care, because are you gonna wear a mask or not? How much are you really gonna worry about it, because it does kind of impede a certain amount of enjoyment, I think, of conventions, for me. So I think really I've just been looking at shows more this year and finally going, other than shows that are ones I go to every year or have a guest at, it's just they're just not worth the time, unfortunately. And then if you get sick on top of it, then it's really like, oh man, if it was worth the time, then you'd be like, oh well. But when it wasn't worth the time to begin with, you're like, that's just sticking the knife in even further.
That's kind of where I'm at now. I do essentially the Jim and Dan shows, and then I have my own. And those are the only ones I do, because one is I remember when I was, years ago when, you had bills at the shop, so you had to make sure you did a show every, whenever you could. Those days are long behind me now, so I don't have to do shows anymore. I do them for, what, we're going to clear some stuff out of the back. So let's go do a show. And then I end up buying at them, and then I end up talking to everybody that I haven't seen in a month or so. And
there's a social aspect to it, which is why, for me, there's I'm always in Detroit for Motor City. I'm always in Cincinnati for the expo. I'm usually always in Dayton for Gem City, and then we like to go down to Heroes Con because it's such a cool show.
Yeah.
After that, we've done shows. Andy Bennett and I have done shows over the decades, but that's kind of what's left. And those they scratch an itch. They're also good shows, but they scratch an itch where you're not expecting, where you just don't care. You've resigned yourself that it's not going to be a bad show. The only way it would be a bad show is if something actually bad happened. You're going to see people, you're out of the house, you're hanging with your friends. The expectations are just, there aren't any. Because that's, maybe 4 weekends. Now, Heroes is different. Heroes is a work show. And if you can't make it be a work show, then, you just don't do it. But the other ones are all just get away for a weekend social fun. And then, we're still working, but it's just different. But then when you get away from it, I just kind of realized this year that from doing vendor shows and where you're, a retailer or a dealer, artists are just not used to thinking of our time that way. We don't make a living being open for however many, and the sales could be 0 or could be awesome. And you look at a year's worth, and go, okay, it was a good year, it was a bad year. We work in the sense of you put a coin in the monkey dances. And so conventions are not like that. Conventions are much more like a retailer scenario where you've committed to 3 or 4 or 3 days, and you don't know. Nope. You don't know. It could be awesome. It could be horrible. And so that's a really a weird thing for us. And so I've kind of realized that. You go, yeah, I don't like that. Like if I'm going to do that, I'll do the one-day shows like the Jim and Dan, and not as an artist. Yeah. I'll do it as a retail, as a dealer. Yep. And I love it. It's just great because I'm not there necessarily with my crown jewels waiting for the one person who is going to pay the premium price for my collection of Fabergé eggs. I'm a little bit more there like, what do you want to pay? like, I mean, there's a certain sense where you're not going to just give stuff away if you know that it's worth it. Yeah. But then there's things where you're just waiting for someone to actually like be that person that even wants to have that thing in their house. Like you looked at it. Oh, you looked at it.
I thought for sure that last show that I was going to fill in some spots with some Warlord out of those boxes.
Yeah, and I tell you, I got the whole set, but I ain't breaking it up, baby. So you got to have to go all in for the whole set.
Yeah, I ain't starting all over again. That's part of the fun, though. I'm not gonna lie. I'm down to one issue of Arak. Like,
I had all of those. I got rid of those early.
Well, the worst part about it is the issue I'm missing is an issue that Mark was missing, and he was missing another book, and I got them before I put mine together. I gave them to Mark for Christmas one year, and then those are 2 books now I don't have personally because I decided,
I need to, and I Half Price Books up the road from me had some long boxes outside for dollar books, and they actually had some books that I had wanted that I needed to fill some gaps. And that was just bizarre because there were things that you're like, it's just not worth shipping. It's not worth going on eBay. Yep. And it's a $2 book at best, and I'm not going to spend $8 on it.
Yeah, because shipping, you might get it for $1. They're going to charge you $8 to ship it.
Yeah. So. And I understand. I sure as hell don't put anything on eBay that's under $30 unless it's super easy to ship out, because just the time it takes to list and pack and ship and even lift a finger, is like, I just, people putting on $5, $2 items. You're like, what's your hourly rate? Or do you have like an intern helping you out?
I have a guy who works on commission. He gets 25% of whatever he sells.
Yeah.
So, he'll sell a dollar item.
That's up to them. Man. They make that quarter. Well, actually, if it's dollar, you lose your 15%.
Yeah.
eBay and whatever fees.
But
I learned my memory is just crap for what I have. So I always used to laugh at friends that carried around the lists, the booklet, what they have, and then I would just buy the fourth copy. I'd be like,
I think I got that.
Maybe I need to either not buy anything or write it down.
I finally, during the pandemic, I went to that app on your phone and I use that now. And the worst part about it is that my own personal collection, I got so much of it in storage and it's pushed and there's stuff in front of it now that I'm going to have to go in and take a bunch of stuff out that I don't really want to deal with. So I've only got about a third of my collection in that. And I'm sitting there staring at it and I'm like, I know it says I don't have this book and I'm pretty sure it's in the boxes. Yeah. But I'm going to go ahead and buy one so I can put it on the list.
Yeah. And I go through my collection of comics and I haven't looked through my collection in over 10 years. And so I started to dig it up last year. And so now I keep going back through it and I'm trying to put it into short boxes and rebag, but also at the same time trying to look at things and do the hold it to your heart and does it create love or whatever the hell, and just really try to be honest and say, okay, all right, Dave, you like Machine Man, you love Kirby, we're not going to question that. You love Ditko. But do you really need Steve drawing Machine Man? I mean, you already got the trade paperback. Got the trade paperback. You don't. Do you need Steve drawing Machine Man? You just kind of go, yeah, probably. But so what I did was over the years, I started to buy spinner racks. Mm-hmm. I have 3 of them, and one of them is newer, which is dumb. It's newer 90s, so it has a 90s header, which I hate. But I put trade paperbacks on that I haven't read, and it's full, which means I need to stop buying anything because I haven't read, I don't think, anything in 10 years. The other 2, I have an 80s one and a 70s one, and those are just I was buying quarter books and 50-cent dollar books to put on there, and sometimes I would just buy copies of what I already had because it was easier just to spend $1 instead of finding it in which boxes. Justice League #1, and that's why I started getting into trouble with buying like copies of things way too many times. But the 70s spinner rack, still has a little room in it. So you get some of these books and you're like, well, I could get rid of them at a show. They're worth, they're $1 book, or just go put it on the spinner rack and, it's, and of course the thing that becomes funny with the spinner rack is then I start looking at books and go, oh, what's that worth now? Like, oh, is that like a $20 book? Maybe I shouldn't be on the spinner rack because you don't put bagged and boarded books on the spinner rack. That's I'm morally against that. They have to look, exactly like walking into a little Professor bookstore or whatever. Otherwise there's no fun in it. But you'd be like, maybe the first appearance of Taskmaster shouldn't go on the spinner rack. That was $1, but maybe it should go in a bag and board now. Maybe that should be pressed and graded. Yeah. Oh. Every now and then I'll be like, today I was doing that. I was looking at again Machine Man on the Brain, but I went down to look at the spinner rack and I had some 2001 books. I had #1 and some other ones, an extra copy of #1. And I was like, what's that worth now? I was like, oh, yeah, I should probably go off the spinner. Should probably sell that one.
Well, I bought
$15 or whatever.
I bought some books a while back, and I got somebody's like full runs of like early 80s Avengers, Spider-Man, stuff like that. And I know I have a lot of that stuff already, but I'm like, eh. So I put them through there and I'm like, they're just my reader copies. Because some of them are beat up. They've never been bagged or boarded, no nothing. And so I'm sitting there the other day and I was like, I probably should go through here, see if there's any value here. And I found the first Star Fox, the first Star Fox joins the Avengers. I got
those are the Al Milgrom years.
yeah.
I was reading them back then, and I was going through mine recently. I had Al draw me. I met Al, I think maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago in Detroit, and I had him draw me Firestorm and Star Fox. So I have a drawn in my Avengers collection. I finally got to that loser. God love him. But yeah. Oh yeah, and I tell you, the website, the keyissuecollector.com or whatever so there's a website that's just got key issues, and I realized that years ago. We had stopped at a store in southern Columbus. We were going to Portsmouth with Andy, and somebody had sold a store run of Batman Adventures, just straight from the shelf into a bag and boarded, untouched, and they were all dollar books or something. I bought them for my kid because I had them, but he was young, and I knew he'd trash them if we read them, or if I gave him to trash them. So I'm like, before he trashes these, let's see if anything is worth any money. And then it was like, oh yeah, Harley, huh? And the store just had goofed. They just, and I thought, wow, and I'm not a stan, but I thought, well, that's a pretty big goof to miss.
Yeah.
And it was gorgeous, and I sent it off to, and of course I sold it way too early. Like I lost an easy $800 or $500 by selling it, years before I should have. And then my own copy, I just sold to a friend of mine without slabbing or it was that whole like money now, money later.
Yep.
We'll go with the money now. But I love it. I would totally do another collection, but I do realize that everything that I would deal in as a dealer has to be, for the most part, 80s or older, because even then I'm still making mistakes and screwing up because I'm not you guys. I don't do it full time.
Well, the thing is that a book will be worthless on Friday and Saturday, and then they'll announce something on Sunday, Monday, and by the time you go and open up the store, that book that you have in your dollar boxes is now a $30-$40 book all of a sudden. And
or it's just bizarre with going from Ohio to Detroit. There, you meet other dealers, and something can sit around, and then another dealer from another city will be like, "Oh yeah, I can't keep these on my shelf. I can sell these all day," and you're just like, well, they've been sitting around, in my boxes for, a couple of months at a bunch of shows. They're not flying off the boxes here. So, because I started to just do half off sales on a lot of long box stuff, just because I'm not in it for the long haul. I don't need to have things as, sitting around, and people are like, oh man, you're selling it for $7. I can sell it for $20. And you're just like, good. Great.
Have at it.
You have fun.
Well, last show, some guy got really excited. He got a book off me, and he's like, you got this under. I'm like, dude, I've had that on the shelf for months now. No one's bought it. So the fact that you're buying it, what I have it marked for, made me happy. Yeah. Okay. You want to go make an extra fit, whatever, fine. But I was like, you were the only one to buy it. So was it worth the amount that you're paying me, or the amount that you think you're going to get later?
Yeah. I had somebody at Jim and Dan say, oh, you got to turn that 70 to a 90. That book's you've underpriced it. And I kind of ink and I just laughed, because it was like, dude, nobody's buying it for 70. So, and you could say, oh yeah, well, if you just go put it online, you're like, yeah, man, that's a whole nother job. I have enough time to be here today. That's how much time I'm investing. And maybe at a later date, sure, I would say, okay, but I don't, I know enough of you guys and your horror stories with eBay sales,
Mm-hmm.
with comics, with paper goods.
Yep.
Because conveying condition of a paper product through photos on eBay is just a fool's errand.
Oh yeah. Well, I sold a 9/8 Something's Killing the Children 1. Shipped it. The guy got it. Then he complained and shipped it back and goes, that's not a 9/8.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's a CGC 9/8. It's sealed.
Well, yeah,
I was like,
when it's been CGC'd, you're like, dude, third party. This is the whole point of it. This is the point of CGC,
Mhm.
is to not have this argument
Yep.
of, but you can tell how little I enjoy talking about my career. I much rather talk about your career and your day job and everything. I really have no interest, which is why I love being at these shows with just long boxes of books. It's so much fun, and I kind of find it hysterical when I look at introverted or comic dealers who just kind of sit and can't make eye contact, and they're a little off, and I just kind of be like, oh, I mean, I get it, but man, you're missing out on half the fun, which is harassing people. Which is just bothering people, as they flip through stuff.
well, there is a whole, especially doing the Jim and Dan shows, because I like that small comic show feel.
Mhm.
And you deal with a lot of the same people over and over, which is the unfortunate part of doing
Yes.
small shows.
Yeah.
But and you'll give each other crap. You get other dealers that you've been set up next to for the last 5 or 6 years. You got whatever, and you give you.
Yep.
And it's just this whole camaraderie of being able to talk crap to each other.
Yeah, it's fun, and I don't. I don't do them. I only do them with Jesse and Bill and Mike, my friend Michael, who's a friend of Bill's and Jesse's as well. And because I don't have any need to sit by myself, and like I would be like, what, are you there? Okay, I sit next to you. I really don't want to be sitting by myself.
Mhm.
It's also a social thing.